Hey everyone, and welcome. This is Ahsoka. I'm here with Ryan Lyon, and we're about a day away from Prism's big upcoming launch. I mean, they've already launched, but they have Prism Farm, which is launching in less than a day, depending on when you're listening to this. And we're just going to kind of talk about it, share some alpha, and go from there. Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Yeah, hey Hisoka. Glad to finally make it on your channel after several months of um, sort of flirting around, doing something together. So good to be here.
Yeah, good to reanimate the channel. But I mean, look at Prism. Prism is a project that launched, what was it, like 3 weeks ago at this point?
Yeah, 3 or 4 weeks ago. I can't remember the exact date now. Everything seems like a bit of a blur.
And while it's happening, I mean, when this thing was launching, I'd say the sentiment around Terra alts was probably at an all-time low. I mean, every single chart was broken to the downside. And then Prism was launching, and there was a lot of kind of FUD around the tokenomics and stuff like that. There were very few bulls talking about like how this one might be different. And I mean, it's funny because as Prism performs really well right now, so has like a majority of other alts at the same time. So I think timing wise is is very interesting for Prism, and like we're in the middle of this Terra alt season, and Prism is about to have this major news event that's coming up in a day or so. So what is that news event?
So what's coming? So yeah, we have Prism Farm launching tomorrow, Monday the 7th. Um, uh, Prism Farm, I kind of like to think about it as sort of like pylon pools, but instead of utilizing the yield from UST, you're utilizing the yield from Luna or Y Luna in the case of Prism to essentially farm Prism tokens. We have 13% of the total token allocation assigned to this event, which will be taking place over the next 12 months. And yeah, I think it's a really good opportunity to put the Prism token in the hands of people who are contributing and providing value to the protocol itself, whether that be either through committing TVL by refracting Luna into the protocol, or we have this. I'm sure we'll get into it, but we have this kind of amps boosted pool, which kind of rewards those who are locking up xPrism tokens, which is our governance state governance token,
Yeah.
and adding extra rewards to those guys.
And for some people who haven't been following with Prism, so what Prism basically does is it's a DApp that's on the Terra ecosystem, and currently it works with Luna. So Luna is the main token in the Terra ecosystem. You can stake it, and to get transaction fee rewards, you can put it into various other platforms like Stater or Lido, and you get B Luna and you get Luna X, or you use ST Luna. There's different derivatives of this Luna, and the whole idea is they help you kind of compound your Luna into getting more Luna, or helping you kind of create a liquid derivative of your Luna instead of staking it, because staking it requires a 21-day unlock if you want to unstake it. So where Prism becomes interesting is it takes a different kind of approach to what Stater or Lido do, in that you can deposit your Luna into Prism. And in this refract tab here, you have the option of splitting your Luna into two derivatives, a P Luna and a Y Luna. And then you can do different things with each of those derivatives. And then once you're done with that kind of whatever you're doing with it, you can go back and merge the two pieces together into something called C Luna, which you can then redeem for actual Luna. One of the things that's coming up tomorrow is an additional use case for your Y Luna. You're going to have Y Luna, and currently all you can do with it is basically stake it in the staking page of Prism. And by doing that, you get a 9% APR, 9.28 at the time of this recording. And what's happening is all of your staking rewards that are coming to you for having Luna, they're feeding into the Prism smart contract, and Prism is converting those that Luna, that UST, into equal parts P Luna and Y Luna. So then, as you like let it kind of do its thing, you can come in and claim it whenever you want, and you can just claim it as is. You can convert it into one of these different assets if you want to focus more on Y Luna or P Luna, or you can convert it into Prism. And it's just kind of, and it even collects like the airdrops and does all this kind of stuff. But now instead of staking, what's going to come out next is something called Prism Farm. And the Prism Farm is you kind of do something similar where you deposit your Y Luna into it, and you're going to get Prism tokens in exchange. Oh, here it is, the Prism Farm coming soon. So depending on how many people deposit the Y Luna, depending on the price of Prism, I assume the APR is going to vary. But chances are that if you want staking rewards from your Y Luna, the Prism Farm is going to be one of the highest, if not the highest, APRs available. Because as Ryan said, 13% of the entire Prism supply is being allocated to this farm, and it's going to be printed over the next 12 months. And not only that, but you're able to get a base fee just by depositing your Y Luna, but then you can also get increased APR by doing certain activities, which you guys are cleverly calling amps, right? You want to give a quick rundown on how that works, Ryan?
Yeah, sure. So if you go to the Govern tab over here, you can see, well, so first and foremost, when you stake Prism, you receive a liquid governance token called xPrism, which you can see here on the screen. And xPrism is essentially like an auto compounding token. I don't know. Yeah, you can see it on here. The exchange, and you can see over the few weeks that we've been running to date, the exchange rate of one xPrism to Prism is one xPrism is now worth 1.02, just over in terms of Prism. We have an unlock 21-day unlock period on unstaking xPrism, but you can also swap it in the xPrism pool, which is very similar to sort of like swapping between Luna and B Luna. You're probably going to get a slight discount if you swap Prism directly to xPrism, or you can go straight to UST as you're demonstrating there, Hisoka. So what we're essentially encouraging is we're trying to encourage people to lock their xPrism into the protocol for additional benefits within the protocol. And we had sort of before we came up with this AMPS concept, we had considered the idea of VE Prism or Vote Escrow Prism, which is a kind of DeFi concept where you lock up your governance token for a certain period of time, and in exchange for that, you get sort of either enhanced governance rights or enhanced yield. But instead, we've come up with this AMPS staking idea, which is you pledge your xPrism into the Prism protocol. You see the screen here, and depending on the amount of xPrism that you pledge, you will start to accrue amps. So I think it's 0.5 amps per xPrism per day that you will accrue. And this is there's no lock on this vault, so you can, if you're an xPrism holder, it's kind of like a no-brainer to come in here and lock your xPrism or pledge your xPrism into the AMPS vault. However, if you at any point remove any of your xPrism from the AMPS vault, your AMPS essentially reset to 0. So then I guess that begs the question, so what is AMPS and what functionalities does it play within the protocol? So the first functionality for this is going to come in the Prism Farm. So we split the Prism farm into what we call the base pool, which in the base pool, anyone who deposits Y Luna, that the Prism rewards will be split equally between all the Y Luna that's participating. And then for the boost pool, so 20% of the tokens that are being distributed, they're going to go specifically to people who are boosting or who have amps. And basically based on the amount of amps that you have plus the amount of Y Luna that you have, will essentially kind of determine the amount of tokens that you get from that 20% of the boost pool. There's some pretty complicated maths that we've outlined. If you want to go and look at the formulas, you can go to our Medium and check those out. It's essentially like you gain a weight in the pool, which is the square root of your amps. I think times the amount of Y Luna that you have. That determines your weight, and then the amount. Then your proportion of the boost pool is essentially your weight divided by the sum of all the weights of everyone who's participating, and multiplied by the rewards that are available.
So to summarize, I mean, what we're talking about here is basically like you're in crypto. If you have assets, you want to farm them to get more assets. And the better the farms plus the least amount of risk equals some of the best farms and use cases. So what I like about Prism is you can farm using your Luna with single-sided staking. So you're not taking on any impermanent loss risk. And you're doing it in a way where you have the potential to have some really high APRs, because for an entire year, Prism has allocated 13% of their supply towards like bootstrapping their TVL with Lock Luna, with Lock Prism. And it works very symbiotically, where if you're a farming and dumping kind of person who's just, mercenary capital, you can totally use Prism, and you can totally put your Y Luna in there, and you can totally farm that Prism and dump it. But if you are somebody who is a bit more bullish or long term or wants to accumulate xPrism, well, you get more of that farming rewards. You get to stack more of it while keeping it risk free. And I think that's a powerful concept. And you compound that with, no VC unlocks over the next 5 months. You compound that with no team unlocks over the next 5 months. You consider that there really aren't, I don't know if there's plans to add some, but there really aren't any like LP emissions at the moment. And like Prism owns a lot of its own liquidity. So the only real form, and I mean, and if you look at the actual like staking right now, the current APR is 42%, which is not from inflation. So you're looking at all of these ways to earn money with Prism, not with inflation. And then the only source of inflation that's coming is something that you can have like an unfair advantage of if you were a believer in the system. So I just think it's an interesting strategy here. I think with the relatively low market cap, I mean, this was much lower even a couple of days ago, but still low-ish. It's one of the better opportunities, I'd say, to maximize like what you can do with your Luna while getting some pretty good price appreciation. I mean, Ryan, you can't talk about this because you work for the protocol, but I have nothing to do with the protocol, so I can speculate on price all day. And I have been speculating on Prism price for the past month. I think like before when they were doing the Prism Forge, I was just thinking about this all in my head. I'm like, well, there's not going to be much sell pressure, and people aren't unlocking their tokens, and the emissions are going to be pretty low. At some point, this all kind of leads to a supply shock. And if you look at Cefi's Twitter page, he's kind of been talking about the same thing. And I mean, it's, a lot of this is actually due to Terra just kind of having an alt season, but a lot of this is fundamental too, because a ton of xPrism is about to get locked up in like 24 hours. And if people are like attracted to the farming APRs that they see, and they see that there's very to minimal risk on their Y Luna delegations. I think it's an interesting kind of play. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wanted Ryan to jump on to this video, is just to get this more on people's radars. You know, it's coming tomorrow.
Yeah, I think you know, I think a lot of well, the Prism community is quite interesting because I think those that are engaged are like really engaged. Those that get it really do get it. So I mean, like some of the stats that you're seeing here. So I think we're around about 71% of all circulating Prism is staked in governance, and as we were saying, there's a 21-day unlock period on that as well. So that number is going to stay pretty high, even if people start to unstake a little bit at some point in the future. And then I think we're something like 60% of xPrism is pledged to the Amps vault as well. So, you know, really high engagement and high percentages of lockups across like governance and the Amps vault. So as I say, those that get it like seem to really get it. But I do understand that at the same time, I think a lot of lunatics have kind of got a mental block when it comes to Prism. Like it is like relatively complicated, I guess, compared to like some of the other protocols. And you know, I think when people see the APRs in Prism Farm for single-sided lunar staking, which is essentially what it is, I think some of I think it's going to click into place for a lot of people because I saw a bot pop up on Twitter the other day, which kind of shows the various APRs of single-sided lunar staking. So I think you got a bunch of options now. Like you can hold B Luna in your wallet, and you've got Luna X, you've got Y Luna staking, you've got native Luna staking, and then I think you've got N Luna staking in Nexus, which has been popping off a little bit recently, up to kind of around 15-16%. But Jimmy's put together a calculator for all the variables that will contribute to the APR, and even if you go in there, and even if you're kind of really conservative in the numbers that you put in there, it's going to be sort of, at least, especially early doors when there's a relatively low amount of Y Luna in the farm. We could, for those who are boosting with amps on top of the base pool, we could be talking 3-digit APRs on single-sided lunar staking, which I think is just going to be pretty wild.
Yeah, that's bananas on single-sided Luna staking. Like, what I like about it too is, I mean, I've been in DeFi. Like, I go to different ecosystems. I see these giant APRs, and kind of the whole play is like there's something hot. You put your capital into it. You farm like these crazy APRs, and you try to cash out to something that's not hyperinflationary, and you kind of rotate capital. But one thing I like about the whole Prism system is there's a potential where like it's still just one source of emissions, so there's not like a huge amount of inflation going on. And the beautiful part about xPrism is if you stake it, you're getting a ton of APR, not from inflation, but you're getting it from fees, revenue sharing of the protocol. So what this farm is, it's giving you an opportunity to farm more xPrism risk-free. And with that farm token, like, yeah, you could rush to dump it, but I think the motivation to dump it is not that high, just because like the supply shock is pretty strong, and the staking comes from real fees and not emissions, and those two things, like that can make a big difference. Like you look at something like Osmosis, where it's had high APRs for a year and it does pretty well. And not to like compare it to a layer one to what Prism is, but a lot of the similarities are there, because I mean, Prism is the base pair for all of the derivatives on the platform, along with Luna and UST. So there's a real use case need for the token, both as a pair and both with staking. And you have this one opportunity for 12 months to actually farm the thing, which I know when I'll be farming the tokens, my goal isn't going to be to try to dump it as quickly as possible. I'll just be restaking it, because I think long term this will be a good revenue source. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know, what we've launched so far is just basically our MVP, right? Our minimum viable product, which is perpetual Luna swaps. We've got a lot in the pipeline here, right? So, you know, once we've got farm out the way, and there's a couple of other features on the protocol that we want to get working, which are, you know, the trading charts, which will be hopefully coming next week, which you'll be able to map not only, you know, the liquidity pairs that we've got, as you say, they're all against Prism, but you'll also be able to map, let's say, Y Luna against P Luna, or C Luna against Luna. So I think that's going to be really interesting for people, and I know that a lot of people have been crying out for charts against UST, or, as I say, like the P Luna, Y Luna charts, because unfortunately all you can see on like CoinHall right now is the charts against Prism, and I think people kind of really struggle with that, given that both assets are kind of fluctuating in price. So I think this is going to help people a lot. And then the other thing that we want to get out there is limit orders. You can see here next to the swap button there's the order button, and you're going to be able to set limit orders on the protocol. So let's say you're trying to catch like a specific ARB on Luna C Luna, for example. You'll be able to place orders, and we're going to be incentivizing bots to fulfill those orders. So we're hoping that, you know, I think there's a limit order functionality on Meow Trader, for example, but you kind of I think it's like one bot that's executing, and you have to kind of pay fees to incentivize it to hit your order first. Whereas here we're hoping that, you know, bots will spring up all over the place, because we're going to be incentivizing them with fees to actually place these orders. And the really cool thing is that those limit orders are going to not only be working on Prism Swap, but actually across any DEX pair across Terra. So you'll be able to put limit orders on Astroport pairs, Loop pairs, TerraSwap pairs. I think that's going to be a really interesting piece of functionality. And as you say, you know, fees from that will accrue back to xPrism holders. So that could be a really lucrative functionality for xPrism holders. But once we've got that functionality out the door, you know, we already have code written for splitting Astroport LP pairs, which I think is going to be a really interesting a really interesting assets, or really interesting assets to refract. So you're going to have the YLP and PLP pairs, and it'll be really interesting to see kind of how they play out in terms of like what is the interest in the principal LP tokens, and also potentially like an opportunity for different dexes as we split other dex LP pairs to actually lock liquidity in perpetuity by potentially buying up cheap principal tokens, because to actually get so for example with Luna here, perpetual, to actually get the Luna back out of the protocol, you have to combine equal amounts of Y and P Luna, otherwise it's locked in perpetuity. And then we also have code written for bAsset refraction. So BETH will hopefully be coming soon. as well as if Anchor get around to launching any other B pairs. I know that bAtom and bSol are in are in audit right now, and hopefully they'll be coming soon and bring some nice optionality to the protocol as well. And then finally, working hard on putting out fixed maturities. So and that there's a lot of talk about maturities in the white paper, but a very different product to perpetual refracting perpetual assets, in that it'll sort of be like you can sell off your yield of, let's say, Luna for 3, 6, 9, or 12 months, and then at the end of that period, you'll be able to essentially redeem. The Y token will trend towards zero, and by holding the P token, you'll be able to retain ownership of the full Luna after the term. So that's like a good option for people who are maybe looking to sell yield now, spend that yield on doing something else, and then still retain ultimately, the rights to the full underlying asset over a period of time.
Yeah, that's a fat roadmap. Stuff tomorrow, mid, long term value, and everything you just mentioned. It's all feeding. It's all generating fees. All those fees are coming back to stakers. They're literally like step one for this protocol, and that just kind of reiterates, I think, the importance of taking advantage of this risk-free, single-sided, 1 year only Prism farm with high APRs. It's just, there's gigabrains working on this project. Hyperion, this is his brainchild, but like he pitched it to several people, and who got behind it? Just like the best of the best in terms of VCs. Hashed, TFL, Jump. Like these are people putting their firepower behind Prism, and you can kind of, like, everything you just talked about, it logically aligns up perfectly. I can see how it's all feeding back value to Prism stakers, and it's just I think it's one of the top tier primitives on Terra. I think it's right there alongside Anchor in terms of being on the Mount Rushmore of Terra projects. And I'm just excited for this farm tomorrow. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be. I think it's going to be a really interesting week. I think, as I say, those who are really engaged are probably really looking forward to it, and I hope that, as I said earlier, the use case will well, at least like the attraction of Prism Farm will sort of make its way to the masses as they see the opportunity that's there.
All right, cool, awesome. I think that about sums up what I wanted to cover here today. Anything you want to close with?
No, I think if you want to learn more about Prism, go to our Twitter page. There's a really comprehensive Notion that's in our bio where you can go and watch videos, listen to podcasts, read articles, see community threads that have been written. I've not seen like a more comprehensive spot for all the resources around the protocol on Terra as what we've put together there. So go and take advantage of that. And as I say, it can be tricky to get your head around these things. So if you then have questions around anything Prism related, come and jump in our Telegram or Discord, or hit us up in DMs if you need to. We want to help everyone to understand what Prism's all about and the opportunities on the protocol. And we just want to see as many people engaged as possible.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Hisoka. Great to speak to you, man.
See ya.